I tried to think of an interesting intro there, but I don't have anything. So we're just going to start.
Well, I mean, as we kind of tell our athletes, like, don't judge your workout by your warm up, and don't judge the podcast by the intro. It's I feel you, dude. It's June 10th, the year 2025. Welcome, everybody. You listen to the Crushing Iron podcast. This is episode 857.
Yeah. Weak intro, but like I was telling my athletes the other day, I'm really kind of into this idea of priming the day with the workout. I'll do the sup board, or I'll do a little walk on the incline. If I don't feel like working, it kind of primes me into doing something. So, this is just our primer. We're trying to get into the podcast.
It is. I love it.
You're just talking shit and not making, any sense. And then you finally figure it out. It's sort of like writing. You just start writing, and then it finally comes to you. They always said that, like, if you start writing something, you really don't have anything valuable for the first two paragraphs.
Interesting. I mean, it makes sense, right? Because we say the same thing with, like you said, like with the athletes, like, because to me, the hardest thing, I was telling somebody this the other day, like the hardest thing about running is putting your shoes on. It's not running. It's just getting your shoes on and like actually taking like the first few steps, and everybody feels better. But it's true, right? Like the best step isn't to plan. A lot of times the best step is just simple action. Like, because you and I could have sat there for 15, 20, 30 minutes and tried to force out a pre-show meeting where we got this like rigid schedule and like, what do we want to talk about? What about this? Now, what about this? And next thing you know, it's 10:45. We haven't even started. And sometimes, I love it. I love the priming thing. It's like, because a lot of times that, action begets more action, and it kind of gets your juices flowing. Like, I know for me, I'm sure it's the same with everyone, but kind of like what you said to your athletes, it's like, if I sit down and have a cup of coffee, like, if the first thing I do is have my coffee and start to work, I immediately like have a little bit less energy and motivation to do activity or exercise. The rest of the day, it takes a lot more to get up to do it than if I just like got up, did some stuff for myself, or if I did something simple like got up, had a cup of coffee, sat for a little bit, and then took waffles for a walk. Right? It's interesting how, like, and I really do believe this, whether you're a morning person or evening person, like those morning routines or rituals, whatever you want to call them, like the first 30 to 45 minutes of like how you choose to start your day, whether it's, intentionally or not intentionally, has such a huge impact on the rest of your day. Right. And the same thing goes for workouts. Like you go into a workout and you go into it intentionally with no expectations, but you're going to get it done no matter what. And you go in and you start off really, 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 really easy, and you can work your way in and end up feeling better when you started. Or you can be in a hurry, right, and have these huge expectations. You can hop in and start your run, especially right now, right? We kind of went from, fake spring, fall to like full on, summer for a lot of places where it's humid and sticky. It's gross. People are not necessarily pacing, especially their runs that great. And they go out too hot, then they end up suffering. But yeah, it's, I really am a firm, believer in just that, like you said, priming and getting, and I think the same thing goes for, like tapering. Like there's a lot of athletes racing right now, and there's a lot of different tapering strategies. And, I think, the old school thought was like, just tons of rest and not doing a lot. And while I agree with obviously scaling back volume and keeping intensity, and ultimately letting the athlete kind of like lead the way each and every day, I think you've seen more and more and more the last, 5-6 years that a lot of people are leaving in a lot more intensity and volume than maybe normal, just kind of keep that tension to keep their body primed and awake and kind of like at the ready, versus basically like, taking your car, which is your training right in your body, on like a cross country trip, which is your big training block, and then parking in the garage in the winter for like a week and then going back and restarting it. It's like you got to keep it primed. Again, I think it's a good topic. Like all the things we can do either during the taper week, during the workout week, or just like to get your day started to help prime you to be successful, instead of priming you to like be less successful with how much extra energy and effort it's going to require to be successful on the day.
Yeah, I mean, I think about this in terms of not only daily workouts, but also I have a lot of like obscure thoughts in my head, it seems like, and I can't really necessarily put them in paper, or at least put them out through my mouth. But it's like, I think about this in terms of racing too. I always talk about, I've never really called it priming, but I always say ease in, like to different, your swim, your bike, and your run, because you're changing your, muscle groups, and you're changing your blood flow to certain areas and things like that. And I just think it's important to kind of let that happen. Like if I get up and try to run right out of bed or something like that, I know that, a lot of people kind of do that. And I think that has its own sort of advantage in a sense. It kind of like means, you get up and your body knows you're going to work, and you're kind of just doing your shit. And there's some power in that too. But for me, it's kind of like, I was following this guy. Look, he had a video about how his, he changed his life or whatever in 45 minutes. I kind of get sucked, 45 days, and I get sucked into that stuff. And he started talking about getting up at 4:30. He kind of lost me a little bit there, but but he said, he goes, he was like, I do my coffee. I kind of hang out. I do some reading or writing, and I kind of let my body sort of get, into the, position of, where it needs to be. And then I do my workout. He said, I just need to kind of wake up. And, some people wake up and they're awake. And I've just never been that sort of person, like I was doing training peaks last night at 11 o'clock at night, stuff like that is just kind of like how I roll sometimes. But yeah, I really find it interesting, man. It's, for me, the whole idea behind priming is kind of, cause I don't know. I said to my athletes too, I said, honest, if I'm being real honest, about at least half of my workouts, I don't really look forward to them. You know what I mean? And because they're, it just feels like a lot sometimes. So I like to create something that I look for, that's movement at the core, but it's something that's just like, all right, this ain't going to be bad. This will be, and almost 9 times out of 10, it kind of kicks something into gear, and it just sort of puts me in a body and mindset that makes me look a little bit more forward. It's like, okay, because sometimes I feel honestly almost like incapable when I get up. It's like, you're gonna tell me right now I'm getting out of bed, I'm gonna go do a hour run or something like that. That just sounds miserable. But if I can get like a little walk going or a little sup board or something like 15, 20 minutes, then I get done and I'm a different sort of person almost, it seems like. It just sort of eases the quantitative easing or whatever the hell that would be. It kind of eases the pressure of things. And,
yeah. No, I like that. I was just having this conversation with an athlete earlier today. It was like, she's like, I didn't want to make any like decisions, in the moment, based on what I was feeling. And it's so true. Like over the course of a day, because like, like the busier you get, some of your days, like I know for me, like when I get into the day, I'm like, was that this morning or was that yesterday? I'm like, oh, that was yesterday. Like, even like before the call today, I was like, was that this weekend? I was like, no, it's like a week and a half ago. Like there's just, you don't understand how you feel or like what's going on, whether it's stress is high or super busy, like you tend to make these decisions. And I think we're all, like you said, you get sucked into that kind of stuff. I think we all get sucked into the, how we feel in the present as a kind of, this is what I'm going to feel like for the next day or the next week or the next month. And this is how it's always going to be. And rarely ever does that happen. Like, and to me, like I always get these messages from athletes, like when they've missed a workout or missed an, say they could go through, 2-3 weeks of being super consistent. And even though like life is stressful and they got lots of obstacles, and they might even feel the same way as you. Like, they're not really looking forward to every workout or even, all of them or half of them because life is so stressful, but they know it's important. They know that it makes them feel better when they're done. Because to me, that's like the kicker, right? It's like, you might not look forward to it, but the end result, the end game is going to be a positive, right? It's going to have a positive impact on how you feel, throughout the course of the day. But that you could go through 2 or 3 weeks and have like, just fight through it tooth and nail and do a good job. And then all of a sudden you miss a day and you miss another day. And then that's when you get like the text message to the coach. Hey coach, like I just, I just don't see things getting any better. And, I don't know that I'm gonna be ready for this race. And then the race is in like, October. And you're like, whoa. Like we only had like 2 bad days. Like over the course of 3 weeks, you only missed twice. So you got out of 21 days, you hit 19. Like we're in a really good spot. But you never see an athlete hit 3 weeks of all, of solid workouts and then be like, you know what? I think I'm going to pack it in. Things just aren't working out. Like we just take the what's happening in the present and being a total prisoner of the moment, whether it's a feeling with our emotions, whether it's, how we feel, mentally, emotionally, physically, we take that and we tend to like throw gasoline on it as it's going to be like this never ending feeling of whatever it might be. And then we make these future decisions based on that. And a lot of times, like I was telling someone this morning, actually, it was like, a lot of times the best decision to make is just not make a decision. Like just to simply do what you can do and not make a decision. Because I simply believe that this is true for a lot of athletes, especially those that have like really high expectations, is they try to be something way too specific to their lifestyle and their attention span. And, I've got a lot of athletes that go back and forth from, triathlon training to run training. They want to do this. And it's like, they find very little success in trying to be something very, very, very specific because it's a lot of expectation. It doesn't leave room. And I don't know that you're this way, but I do think you're this way in like, on a different level of being a triathlete. Like you don't like things that are rigid. You don't like to have overstructure. You don't like, certain parts of it, but you do love the rest of it. And there are a lot of athletes who I think get so caught up in feeling like they have to be this one specific thing all the time that they just don't, they're trying to adhere and put themselves in a box they just know isn't going to be any fun, versus embracing the fact that they like flexibility and they like this freedom, and some people might call it, chaos and, not craziness, but like they might look at you and be like, what the fuck are you training for right now? Like, I'm training for this. Like, that doesn't look like training for that. Yeah, but to me it does. And as a coach, that's all that matters. And I told him this in a training piece. I was like, listen, I think the problem here is you're trying to be something that you really don't want to be, but you can still accomplish what that version wants to accomplish by doing things a lot differently and being okay with that. And I think there's a lot of flexibility in that. I think there's a lot of freedom in that. I think it's, I think it can be, not just freeing, like I said, but it can open up even more opportunities, not to feel like you have to put yourself like smack dab in a box, what you're going to do with your training, what you're going to do with your schedule, what you're going to do with your day, what you're going to do with your workout. And have a little freedom and take a little ownership, of what you're doing. Because to me, that's where the buy-in is created. And just to me, it's just, obviously it's like on a much larger scale, when we're talking about priming is, you're doing something that might not be completely structured and completely predictable, but you're doing something. And then as you kind of get going and flowing through your workout or through your day, things unfold and then you react accordingly. And, in a sport that's just been way over analyze and has way too many things to connect and disconnect and just it's so much out there. I think it is actually put like type A's obviously feel like they succeed a lot in this sport, but obviously there's a lot of type B, C's and Z's that also are very, very good at not feeling they have to be perfect, and just finding their own way to prime their training and to prime their day, because they don't have to be as rigid. Right? You don't have to, quote unquote, identify as a triathlete. You can just identify as an endurance athlete or just somebody who likes to work out. And this is my schedule. And it just so happens to work for me. And I think allowing yourself that freedom is way more, it will set you way, up for way more success than trying to force yourself into a schedule that you think meets the criteria that everyone else expects versus what you think you would have fun doing for the longest period of time. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you said taking ownership, and I think that's so important. I've always talked about RPE and effort and, learning the body and everything like that. And I think that's at the core of it. It really is sort of, some days, for whatever reason, you don't have it, and other days you just have it. But you really never know until you get into it, right? So I try to kind of give myself a chance. Some days I'll be like, man, my legs feel heavy, and then I'll be like, well, maybe go do something, and then I kind of get into it, and then I was projecting, my overall feeling based on how I felt as I was, making lunch or something, and so I just don't know if we always know, and I think you pay attention to your body. I mean, you said the hardest part of running is putting on the shoes, and I think sometimes it's the second hardest part of running, because on Sunday I went out for a run, and it was one of those runs that kind of like makes your skin feel dry or something. Like it does some weird, like it's almost like you're really dehydrated yourself or something like that, kind of. But I got to I think I had about a mile left or whatever, and it wasn't like a super long run, but I thought, well, I think about a mile is about the limit, so don't get fancy here, and then I just kind of made my way through it and got it done, but it's really kind of shelled me when I got done, and I could tell, because, when you come in and you're just like, the first thing you reach for is like a cookie or something like that, and something's a little bit off, but I really felt like, man, I might have just set myself back for a few days, but I didn't. I kind of just did what I had to do that day, and I took care of, replenishing my body, and, didn't do anything crazy. And the next day you kind of get up and you're like, well, I'm still a little fatigued, but I feel fine. And then you kind of just figure it out. I just, the rigid part of things, I think that kind of almost translates too into approaching workouts. It's sort of like, I like to be fluid with what's going on, and I told my athletes too the other day, sometimes you got to push it a little bit if you feel it, and we talked about them many times. I think, if you feel good, kind of test the waters a little bit, because, if you're never testing the waters and you're always kind of just going within an outline all the time, and you're not really kind of branching out with your own exploration, I don't think you can learn how to do it when you need to, maybe in a race. It's like sort of like you talk about having a plan A, B, C, D, you kind of have to understand what those all mean and how you can adjust, and maybe you feel better than you thought you would. And if you're just not going to feel the confidence to go out and take advantage of that on race day, you might be leaving something on the table, and vice versa. You might be pushing too much, even though you think you're feeling good, but or you want to try and push through something too early or whatever, rather than letting it come around. And there's just many opportunities. These are long days, and I think you gotta, just be able to be a little bit fluid and flexible, instead of always just completely rigid on a number or whatever that case may be. Don't believe how you're going to feel. It's going to change.
And I think one of the more important things too, like I love what you said there, is, knowing what gets you excited and knowing what drains you. Right. Like if right, I think we do this to ourselves all the time in pretty much every aspect of life, right? Like, what challenges us and what makes us feel confident, we're going to be successful in everything. And a lot of that comes with preparation. And I'm not talking like planning out your whole week and, but meal prepping, right? Is a, you make your own schedule and you fit it in. You don't just like be reactive. And I think a lot of times we do that in training. I have this conversation a ton, is like, your problem isn't that you don't have time. Your problem is that you don't make a schedule. Yes, you're busy. Yes, we're all busy, but you're more reactive. Like training to you is you'll fit it in around everything else. And while that's important, right, to have that in, and yes, life, takes precedent a lot, and training is something we do. It's a hobby. Like if you have these goals, you have to make that part of your priority. If, fueling well and trying to make, diet changes is important to you, and you're super busy, then it is up to you to understand that is an area of weakness, right? Or area of improvement, right? And you meal prep on Sunday, or maybe it's like a meal prep on a Sunday and then again on a Wednesday. You have to do that, and that sets you up for success. It's like 45 minutes to an hour on Sunday might save you 2.5 hours during the week, but also result in much better training and better sleeping, because you're not making terrible food choices, right? Just like, for me, if the first thing I do was get up and open up my laptop and hop in Training Peaks, just like my ass did this morning, I'm less likely to work out, because then I wake up and then the first thing I do is I give and I drain, and then my brain starts to roll, and it's like, oh, you could do this, we could do that, and it's a mental drain out of the gate. And it takes me, just like everyone else, it takes mental energy to want to work out and to train. It just does, right? Your body's never like, that's always love. Like, the body just wanted to run today, coach. The body just wanted to run. I'm like, no, it didn't. Your ego did. Your ego might have legs, but because it's inside of you. But you wanted to run fast. Just say you did, not your body did. Your legs can't speak to you. The body just wanted to go, coach. Like, well, I never heard your ass say that in the pool. Like my arm just wanted to go today. Here we go. I'm gonna rip off some hundreds. Like no one's ever said that. I think in the history of my coaching, no one's ever said, body just wanted to swim today, coach. I just wanted to rip a few off. Like it's always in the run. But like that's to me, that's my kryptonite. If I get up and the first thing I do is work, the chances of me getting in training the rest of the day is like 20%.
Really?
If I get up, have my cup of coffee, and obviously head straight to the pool or hop on the bike or get in a run, it's 100%. And the rest of my day is great because guess what? The rest of my day is already a success. I'm not worried about getting my training in or worried when I'm going to fit in because I already fit in. There's just a lot of things I think we can all do to understand like what sets ourselves up for success and what doesn't. If we know that we are a terrible pacer, then start out with your first 10 minutes, prime the workout right. Don't crush yourself the first 10 minutes and have a shitty workout. Do a run walk. Force it. Force yourself to come out of the gate slow. And then build your way in. Commit to having your slowest pace being your first mile and your fastest pace being your last. Like we all know these things about ourselves, right? And I think sometimes we just forget, in the moment what we're more likely, to have or to not have on a given day. And then we tend to make, bad decisions based on our present moment, not on our past history. And I think that's something that we learn as we go, through training and through racing is we make all the, and I think that's why like the longer you race and the longer you're in the game, most athletes just don't get as stressed because you've seen it all. You've done it all. You've had the ups, you've had the downs, you've had the highs, you've had the lows. You've had the great training blocks that lead to shitty races, and you've had shitty training blocks that lead to PRs. You've seen it all, you know it all, and what that allows you to know is you just don't know. Which to me is like the beauty of it, right? You can have like the best training block ever and just go lay an egg, or you could have like the most stressful, inconsistent, injury prone, build ever and go out and just freaking rock it. That's me specifically. I know this for a fact. Like I did that, on quite a few of my builds. Like hell, some of them I was a freaking active alcoholic and coming off, crappy races and, and drinking the night before. And, I've got some 70.3s that I, did crappy after a great build. And then I got another one where I did like a 4:34 and I did a marathon the month before and I was still drinking and barely ran because I had Achilles tendonitis. You just never know. And so like, I think that like the longer you're in the game, the less, just like, the older you get in life, you're like, seeing it. Why are we panicking? Like, this is all going to be okay. But, people who haven't, the younger generations get way more panic because they haven't been through as much. And the older you get, the more things you've gone through, you're like, this isn't really that big of a deal. Like, I think we're all going to be okay. Mm-hmm. But then, the less experience you have, it's like the first time you've gone through something, it's like the end of the world, which is the same thing with training with athletes, like depending on how their simple 30-minute run went, or their bike or, or their week even. It's such a small drop of time in the block, or even the minute or two of the interval that didn't go well in the training session. Like that's not the summary of the session. And a lot of times people will allow like that first interval that didn't go very well to dictate the rest. But I mean, most athletes say like they really woke up and they felt the best on the last one. But if you had just predetermined that it wasn't going to feel great after the first one, you bailed, you'll never know. And so a lot of that, again, is just, it's on us to figure out these things in real time. And I think that's one of the downsides that, the last 3 or 4 years has presented with, endurance sports and athletes is that there's so much structure and data and things that, that can quote unquote predict what we can do or not do, that we see things on paper, right? And we do it, right? We have pre-built, swims and bikes and runs, more so just bikes and then the occasional runs and almost never a swim. But like you see that and you read it out and you see a range or you see an interval and you're like, and you just expect that, right? You have it visually, right? We all visually can see, so we consume it and then we adopt to that. Okay, hey, this is what's going to happen, And so you took 2 examples. Like if I went and gave you, a structured workout, that was very specific from the warm up to the, the ramp up to the priming to like the main set to the cool down. It kind of looks like a lot of pressure, right? Depending on the day, right? If some days, am I freaking Australian? Some days you wake up and you look at it and you're like, this looks like a great challenge. Like I got this. Like this, I'm excited about this. Some days you wake up and you're like, fuck, this is pretty demanding. Like I don't know that I can be demanded like this today. Versus I gave you, a workout that was like, all right, 90 minutes today, at some point throughout the session, just give me like 18 to 24 minutes hard whenever you feel like it on whatever rest you want to do it. Same amount of intensity I'm asking the structured workout, but the way it's just written and consumed, right, visually, completely different. One looks overly structured and, perfect and specific and, excellent prescription and lots of thought and lots of detail. And the other one almost looks, to some athletes, you're like, that just looks lazy. Like you didn't put enough detail in this. But to some athletes, they see freedom and they see, oh, I can totally, you mean I'm in charge today? Hell yeah. Move over, coach. One of them's almost like coach in the driver's seat, athlete in the passenger seat. And then the last workout I gave her, I'm like, hey, dude, just go out for 90 minutes, ride easy. But then, at some point, give me like 20, 24 minutes of threshold, whatever rest interval. It's like athlete, driver's seat, coach in the trunk. And a lot of times athletes need that, right? Because I know which one you would pick. You'd be like, oh, this is right up my alley. Like I can go out and crush this. And it might be, it might be 20 minutes and then rest for 30 and do 4. But it could be anything, and I think that's like that in lies the fun of it. And where I think we should give ourselves a little more flexibility to do that more often because you see that and it's almost like a no fail scenario. I can do 24. It could be 24 1-minute intervals, or I could feel like freaking, Sam Long today on the bike and just rip off 2 12s or a 24 and I'm done. You never know, but you get the same amount. Right. Yes, it's a different, adaptation because of different, work to rest ratio and different intensity level, but there's just a lot of success to happen there. And I think I know me, like I try to do it a lot. I should probably do it more often, is give this freedom. And some athletes respond really, really well to it. They love the freedom and some athletes don't. They're like, why? I don't know what to do. And you're like, well, half the time you're like, that's part of the problem, right? Like you should be able to deviate from the plan on your own and make the best decision, and be not creative, but be, own it. Like you said, have some ownership in the session, in the success of it, and not just feeling like you're having to follow directions 24/7, because that's also like, I think I used this example before. Like I know when Hayden comes home from school, when he's had to listen and be on his best behavior, like all day long, hit the first like 30, 40 minutes and he's home, he needs like ultimate freedom. Because if we start barking orders and telling him what to do, it's going to end very poorly for all of us. And like if you've got kids and a spouse and a job where you're basically, feels like you're everyone's bitch 24/7, you're having to do things for everyone all the time. Sometimes the last thing you want to do is be told what to do again. But then sometimes that's also stress relieving because you don't have to think about what you're supposed to do. Someone else is telling you what to do and you don't have to think to plan. So it's interesting to watch and kind of like see different athletes' psychology of what they love and what they don't love. And then also like in the different periods they go through, right, in life, or just like even a season of training is like, one day the perfectly structured workout is just what they want. And the other day the flexibility is like just what they want. It's interesting to watch. And I think we all change over time. Or even like you said, even during the season, but it's just, I think it's important to have that kind of weaved in to allow, freedom, because that's when we're, have the ability to explore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. I think a lot of us have what would be kind of a latent Calc addiction type of a thing going on. You mentioned how, you can, let's admit it. Like, I think everybody's probably done something in the pool where they're, maybe they just bust out and they just nail 100 at 135 or something. And everybody's probably done it, right? You've all, if I could do that for an Ironman, it's like your only fast one of the day, you know. But then you set the tone where that becomes like, okay, I'm thinking about that or whatever. And it just makes me think about how, and look, man, I don't do everything perfect. Like I just do stuff that in a way that I think will make me better. And I think, will, be, something that, I can appreciate and enjoy and whatever. But I think about, we talked about ballpark training or keeping in the ballpark and stuff like that. But I'd like to almost micro break it down in a sense where, how do you think about that? Like the one example that comes to my mind is when I get in the water here, I got like 100-yard thing out to the island. So, there's current some days and there's waves some days and there's just wind and there's all kinds of stuff like that. So some days I can go out there and swim like my first one and it's like way too long. I'd be like, what? And then, you kind of warm up and then you nail one or whatever. And then I could come back in one time and the wind will sweep me. Like I've, been swept, way out because if I'm not sighting or something a lot, I'll just kind of get pushed off and I don't realize it. And then I got to self-correct and everything. And then that one's like faster. And I'm thinking, well, okay. So sometimes I just think about it in terms of 1 or 2 seconds, right? On 100, like if I'm consistent with it, I'm like, all right, I know I'm in that realm right there, in that range. And you mentioned ranges earlier. And I think ranges are fucking beautiful because if you're kind of like feeling like you're more in control of that effort or that interval or whatever it may be, and you're sort of still in that range, then that you're kind of getting there, right? And sometimes I don't really think, but I'll notice every week or two, I'm like, wow, I just, I'm pretty much consistent at maybe a couple seconds faster here or whatever, and start thinking about things like that because I think, we can all pop an interval or have a great day one day and think that that's our temperament or have a bad day or something like that. But it's just sort of this body of work thing, right? And I think we just get too, caught up in that moment, stuck in that moment. I mean, I think I love the idea of being in the moment when you train, but don't let that moment dictate, where you think you're at. And it's just such a general I had an athlete talk about, she ran, I think it was about, I can't remember, it was an hour and a half, is maybe a 10 miler or something like that. And it was an easy run. And she just kind of at the end said, I'm going to finish this last mile a little bit stronger. And then she had it. And it's like, to me, those are little indicators, right? If you can stay under control and then finish strong, that to me is kind of something you can really look at with a little concreteness. But it's not the be all end all. And, how it goes, man, you kind of be, training for a full or a half or something like that. And, you really don't know sometimes a lot. You have an indicator. I mean, and I know you can kind of tell where you're at and you can tell where your athletes are at. And I can too. It's just that sometimes it's not what you think it is, it's like if you can run, a fast, let's say a minute interval or something like that, that really doesn't tell you the truth all the time. So I just think it's interesting to look for, within the sport itself, what is the real indicator in today's training session? If you're doing a full, is it that 1 mile interval or is it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean,
it's such a
it's
wild area to think about it like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we get this questions all the time, though, right? Like, what specific benchmark, is there for me to use as like, the predictor to how I'm going to, and we get this, like I said, we get this question all the time. And I think it'd be very, like for me, I think every coach goes about it in a different way. Like, when you're trying to predict like, what they should ride watt wise, you kind of look back at a few key rides, you get a ballpark, and then you think about, how, it drives my athletes crazy. I'm like, if you're racing on Sunday, like, don't ask me till Friday. Like, I want to see how your attitude is, how you're feeling. Are you up? Are you down during the taper week? What's the weather going to be like? What kind of positive comments have you made about your body, and how your legs, like if you're feeling like, and I'll just be honest, I don't think I've ever told him this before, but like, one, I want to see what the weather actually is going to be like. Is it going to be 90 or is it going to be 70? Big difference, humidity, dew point. But let's say, Mike, I'm coaching you, and your average to above average day is going to give us 200 watts on race day. But over the course of like the taper week, you're just fucking jacked. Dude, I feel so good. Like, I don't know if I ever felt this crisp. My heart rate's down. HRV is great. Every session, you're like, I'm ready to roll. Can't wait for this to happen. And the weather's good. I might say, let's roll with 210, baby. Because I can tell that you're willing and you're ready. And if I say 210, you're all in. You're like, that sounds great. Let's do it. Versus if I'm thinking like 200 and I see like, yeah, I'm just not feeling that great this week. Like, body's not feeling awesome. Like I don't know. I'm starting to have doubts about my training and, I'm racing. It's, I had this meeting pop up, so I'm not going to get in town till late. And, my hotel got, my VRBO got canceled last minute. So I got to tell us like stress is high. I might say 190 because and obviously like, you've got the ability to change that as we go, over the course of the race. But I might start you at 190 to make sure we're feeling a win out of the gate because you need it.
Well, that mentally,
you're, what'd you say?
I said that's priming, really. If
exactly right. Like, mentally, you're maybe not there. So we need to start with the wings. If I say 200, 210, and you don't see that for the first, you're gonna think your race is over. Versus giving you some confidence of 190 and knowing you can build into it, and you get to like mile 30 or 40, and you're like, dude, I'm feeling pretty saucy right now. I think I can build it up. I think I can do this. I've got this. And then they end up averaging, 200, just like you wanted them to. It's the same exact thing. And that's why I do that a lot with the rides and the runs. I just, give them RPE because you never know what you're going to feel like. But for an Ironman, when I try to like guesstimate, if you will, what an athlete's overall time will be, obviously you take the terrain and the temperature into effect, but really to me it's volume of work. It's not like one specific workout. It's just I can look and see, hey, what have you been able to what workload are you consistently comfortable doing, and how long you've been doing it. And obviously like the speed in which they could do it and the power in which you do it is obviously important, but like I take total body of work. And this accumulates the amount of fitness you've gained, the work you've done each and every week. I'm pretty sure you're going to be between like the 11 to 11:30 ballpark, or maybe 11:15, depending on what it is. Like I don't do it based on the Calc, swim pace, bike power. I'm just like, yeah, you're probably in this range of work because this is where your fitness is. This is how fast your fitness says you can travel 140 miles. Total, because of the work you've done without, slowing down a dramatic amount the last, 10 or 15 miles. I think, again, so I just think it's, there's a lot of different ways to do it. And I think there's not one secret session. There's no Triathlete magazine article where it's like, hey, the top 5 pre-70.3 workouts to give you the best bang for your buck. Like, those are irrelevant if you don't do shit the rest of the time. Just like your Garmin telling you you can rock a 3:20 marathon off your recent 5K time when you haven't done a long run over 40 minutes. Irrelevant, right? It's like it's total body of work. You got to do the long stuff to make it count, or you got to be able to accumulate the same kilojoules over 4 hours that you get over 6. If you're kind of a time crunch athlete, but yeah, to me it's total body of work. It's total body of work is what gets you your time. No singular, like you said, no single special session is going to give it to you, or one singular missed session is ever going to be that much of a disruptor. Ever. And so, 80%, just nail the week 80-85% and do it for 80% of your weeks. Don't be all in 100% for 3 weeks and then go full red for 2. Way worse. Way, way worse, right? It's 60%. You're better off being 80% compliant for over 80% of your weeks. That really is that simple. It's nothing magical. It's no amazing week. It's no amazing workout. It's no amazing weekend. It's no special race block. You just gotta knock it out and be consistent. And I know that's boring as hell for people, but that's just the truth. You put in a super consistent, block, and you're gonna be okay.
Yeah, I mean, I know people don't want to hear it. I mean, it is. It's just a matter of, we talk about feel for the water, and that's just like, swimming a lot and feel for the bike and feel for the run and feel for your stride. And to me, those are consistency things. And it is true. I've seen many athletes kind of, just get consistent for a long, the last 6 to 8 weeks and have really good races. Even that is just, not ideal, but some people can, for whatever reason, they just flip a switch and they get the consistency factor. And I think there's something to be said for, it is interesting because, sometimes you'll see somebody go to a taper and then they kind of, and I sort of used to do this where you're, well, I'm in the taper, it's like Hayes in the barn, screw it.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned it earlier. It's like time, I put in the work, it's time to rest. And then literally the week of the race, where I've done nothing in the past, because I don't travel and you're just kind of hanging out and doing the stuff. And maybe you might run 10 minutes or do something like that. But I've literally felt like, oh man, I hope I remember how to ride my bike tomorrow. Because I haven't been on it in a week, it's just this weird thing about consistency and feel for how to do it. And I think that's a lot of it, you'll get back on and obviously figure it out because it's just like riding a bike, but sometimes it takes a little while, to kind of find that groove. And I think there's something to be said about really being comfortable and consistent and in that groove all the time that makes you just more relaxed and gives you an ability to kind of go out and just execute your day a little bit better rather than being kind of always scrambling. And that's where I've been many times where I've scrambled and, and then you got to really dig deep mentally and, fight through a bunch of shit. And like I've talked about, I'm kind of over that, my mental capacity to really go to the well has been challenged over the years, And so in that respect, I guess that's why I'm trying to be more consistent with stuff and just, because it just becomes easier,
Right.
even though it's not easier, not per se, but, it doesn't always feel like a battle out there.
I mean, it shouldn't, right? And I love that because, like, I think we get caught up like back in our, even for me, like, back in the days, like, or even like early on when Hayden was still little, I was able to like knock out intensity and intensity, intensity and intensity and intensity, and now it's like I can't do that every day because I feel like my day is already intense enough and I'm just layering on extra stress. I'm like, well, fuck, this is not fun at all. Mm-hmm. And then I get run down. Then I get so run down. My motivation is so low, as Doug said, either do before, both in work and in life and relationships and training. The next day, I'm like, God, I gotta get up and answer the bell again.
Right.
And it's just sometimes it's just not there. And here's the thing, right? Is that's okay. Right? You just have to adapt and make things a little bit different. And that's also okay. But I think recognizing it is a huge part of that puzzle. Into what you can, or because to me, it's not about what you can or can't do. It's about what you can do if you're willing to understand and realize what you no longer can't do. Mm-hmm. It's not one or the other. It's I just can't do this anymore. Or I can do this. Sometimes I can't do it this way anymore. I can't keep treating my body like a, freaking carnival Ferris wheel ride and just doing whatever I want to and still being able to show up on race day and do awesome. I can't do 6 trek workouts a week and, 18 brick runs and some, 40-mile long runs and be ready to roll on race day on a 2-day taper. I might need pretty much all easy work, but I might need a lot of it. And I might need a couple, hard days, and I might need a longer taper. That's just, and it doesn't even change. It's not even really age that I see with some people, because I've seen some people go the opposite direction. Sometimes I've seen people as they get older need more intensity and they can handle more intensity because they're alive. Their kids are gone. They got nothing to do. They're retired. They're like, dude, layer it on me. But you're like, oh, well, they're old. They can't handle as much. I'm like, some can handle like a lot more, versus, so maybe it's a 30, 35-year-old who, you start coaching them Let's call them 30. You start coaching them and they got, a 9 to 5 job and that's it. No plant, no dog, no girl, no kids. 2 years later, 2 kids, a wife, a dog, and a lot of plants, right? And 100 yards of mulch delay every spring and summer. That's totally different person from a training standpoint, but they're still like, oh, I got to keep doing this. I'm like, dude, we cannot do that anymore. Your life just won't allow it.
Mm-hmm.
Like your stress, we can do it, but you're not going to recover and adapt from it the way that you want to. So why are we doing it anyway? And so again, like it's just I think we just get stuck, right? Going back to the very beginning we're talking about with our priming, is like we just get so stuck in that moment of who we are and what we can or what we can't do. It's just not. You can't do it. You have to, it's like, and it's not about having a can-do attitude. It's just about honestly, like almost sometimes not having an attitude. Don't have a bad one, have a good one. Just have a, like, I'm just moving through this session methodically, like it's a business choice. I'm not emotionally attached. Most athletes would be so much better off completely detaching themselves and treating their training like a business. And it's nothing emotional. It's just business. I'm getting it done. That's it. And then moving on. I'm not hanging my hat on it. It's not going to affect my day. It's just business. And then when you get home, your day is great, versus letting, one hard 30-minute run where you felt like crap make you want to retire and change your whole race schedule.
Yeah. You talked about, we were talking about pedal pressure and how zone 2 just feels like pressure, a little bit of pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, a lot of triathletes, probably including me, could get better at that. We've had podcasts about zone 2 and upper zone 2 and aerobic threshold and things like that. But that's sort of me is sort of like the place, in everything. And I think about this, it's sort of like making, shit feel a little challenging, but making it, kind of getting to the point where that feels easy. And there's a really interesting place there, in swim, bike, and run, where, that becomes the tortoise hare kind of situation that really does produce different results if you can nail it. I think we're all really, set a high watt, today or whatever, that's all nice and everything, but it's not that, like if you go out and blast a bike for, 15 seconds, I mean, yeah, sure, that says something, but, like I've always felt like, that's why I don't necessarily like flat courses, because I'm not good at that shit. That shit is harder to me, and it's harder physically and mentally. And that's how I'm looking at it now a lot, is that mental challenge of just staying on that grinding, needle. Just almost too much, but not over the edge. And those are like that area right there. I mean, as far as training goes and finding that in all the 3 sports, to me, that's where it really starts paying off, if you can kind of own that spot and be good at that. And then it's sort of like being really solid and being consistent with that. And then, kind of tweaking your top end all over the place. I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying it, to me, that's a really important part of this that I think gets kind of neglected. And you're speechless.
Dude, I was like, you had me like, you were talking like aerobic threshold, and like, it's like, dude, you're just talking dirty to me right now.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think everybody has like these, and we call them low hanging fruit, but like, I think if we all did like a strip down of our training in like the areas where like we just readily admit, like, I'm just kind of lazy right here. And I think a lot of people it's like that. It's that zone 1, zone 2. They put on, a Netflix series or whatever, and they like don't even hit their numbers. They just kind of like noodle around, or on the easy sessions, they get way too pumped up and listen to their favorite Spotify mix, and they freaking hammer it because they're not paying attention. I think everyone has like their, again, let's use low hanging fruit, but like the area they could succeed the most in. But a lot of times it's, to me, like the whole training principle is a lot like swimming. The smallest change without without effort, right? Without like some drastic like 8 to 18 hour change. Just like swimming, you're not going to just start swimming 5 days a week. The smallest technique change in swimming can just unlock a whole different thing. Same thing with training. I think if we really like peel back the layers of our training and try to find the areas that we're probably not being as successful in as we could be with the time, because remember, that's especially important if you're a time crunched athlete. Your 8 hours is way more valuable and way more important to nail than the guy with 14. He's got a little wiggle room. He's doing a little bit extra. Not that you have to be perfect, but you got to pay more attention. And I think that's just part of it. I think as we, move throughout the season and even move month to month with your own training, don't be obsessed with what you want or can or can't do in October, just like you shouldn't be, totally obsessed with where you are now or what you did or didn't do 5 months ago. You always say, and I love it, it's like, just be where you're at. And that isn't just with the day, that's with like the minute that you're in the training session, right? It's like, don't make any drastic decisions. Or if you feel yourself fading, right? And you're into like, high zone 1, you're just kind of noodling around with no pressure on the pedals. Get back in the moment, be present, because that's exactly what race day is going to feel like. You're not going to have these, stop and goes. You're not going to be able to coast. You see that a ton with athletes. They go out and like, yeah, I saw you hammered up the hill just so you could basically not pedal on every downhill. And most athletes, and it's kind of a side tangent, but like most athletes, 2-hour, rolling hilly ride is an hour and 40. Because they just coast. They soft pedal. They don't power in out of turns. They just don't. It's just like in Garmin where you swim for, your actual swimming is 46 minutes, but Garmin shows 105, right? Or whatever, because the Garmin doesn't count your rest. It only counts actual swim time. Doesn't count your rest. But you're like, oh, hour and 5 minutes versus, I was in the water for an hour and 5, but Garmin only showed 46, 47. I'm like, yeah, because you only did 47 minutes of work. And same thing with cycling. Go out there and do the purpose. You don't go on a long run and, run the uphills and then walk the downs. Keep it steady. Mm-hmm. Keep the pedal to the metal, brother.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Maybe not full gas. Maybe not full gas, but you know what I mean. Keep the pressure on.
Well, yeah. Keep that pressure on. That's what I find interesting is that's how I ride. I usually ride, you know me, or outside. I'll hammer that hill and kind of go over it and, well, I'll try to get over and then bomb it. But sometimes I'll coast that. But to me, the work is when I get back to a flat and then I can lock it in. But I was just going to say that I think that's why some of my better races have been built up on the trainer. Even if it's just sort of zone 2 work, I go by effort, but I'm kind of keeping that constant pressure. I probably do that naturally pretty well, because some of those rides are, can really get to me. But I think I get, just because of the nature of the way I like to ride is kind of like hammer a hill and then just kind of get over it and bomb down and just coast. That's just sort of how I ride outside. And I've done a lot of outside riding and I feel comfortable. So for me, I feel like almost containing myself and making myself kind of be consistent with that aerobic endurance is almost a better benefit for me sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, it's little things like that, right? That I think we just discount and just totally, think it doesn't matter. If you add it up, it's a lot, So like when you're heading out this week and you're doing your training and you look at your training week, like, maybe you look back at the areas, similar workouts, that you did or didn't do that, like, hey, like I've got an opportunity for a +1 today. Not like a new power, but like just a little more intention, a little more focus, right? Put your do not disturb on your phone. Make it your time, and disconnect and be able to do things the way that you want to do them and do them well. Because honestly, that's half the reason people don't execute is because they're too distracted during all their sessions. Which is why swimming is like the one where people are the most adherent when they want to be, is because there's no distractions, no devices, no AirPods, no phone to look at, no Netflix, no Zwift, no.
But there's a long lost friend waiting at the end of the pool lane to talk to you for a while.
That's also true. Yeah. That's when listen. I'm a stickler for sticking to your swim sets. Always have been. But as your coach, I fully have done this, so I fully support it. Is if you see that it's always a guy at the end of the pool waiting for you to stop your 100, just so they can chat. Keep going. Just swim until you see them swim, and then you can take a break. I fully support avoiding that guy at the pool who wants to be in the water for an hour and a half but only swims 600. Always got something to say. It's kind of like, I think you were there with me that day at the downtown Y when that guy looked over at me. He's like, "Hey, can I swim with you?"
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, different lane, total stranger. He looked at me, warned me. He's like, "Hey, can we swim together? Can I swim with you?" And I'm like, I don't even know what that means, but the answer is no. Right? I don't want to swim, buddy. And I think I swam like 800 threshold just to make sure he knew that we weren't going to swim together. No, it's like fully support doing what you got to do at the pool to keep your head underwater and avoid all awkward, long conversations.
Was that the old Y?
Yeah, that's the old downtown Y. No, not the East National, but yeah, the downtown Y. Have they redone that?
Well, I mean, when I got there, that was a little bit shady, and then they built that monumental kind of workout room. So yeah, they redid it when we were there. But
well, I mean,
I started going there, man. It was like you had to go through the back door and shit. And there was signs all over that said, don't be weird."
Oh, well, yeah, but it's that same YMCA where like you're like the huge countertop with the sinks where people shave is right in front of the sauna in the steam room.
Oh, that's right. I used to flash.
Right? Yeah, I had a lot of uncomfortable scenarios where you come out, I'm like, I'm going to shave, and I'm looking in the mirror, and behind me I can see all these dudes in the sauna in the steam room, may or may not be clothed, may or may not be staring. It's just a weird setup, right? It's like, to me, it's like having the mirror on the bathroom, like facing the toilet. Like, why do I want to be looking at myself right now? Like, it's total. Why are we putting things right here? Like things that don't need to be here. Why are they here?
Yeah.
That's
the adventure Y for sure.
It was definitely, it is a choose your own adventure downtown YMCA in Nashville, Tennessee. Yeah. So if you're traveling through, go choose your own adventure at the downtown YMCA and tell them that Mike and Robbie sent you. That's all we got for today. Well, I won't be here on Thursday. I'll be traveling. But as always, we love you guys. We appreciate you. Go to our website, c26triathlon.com, and as our one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community. If you need anything from Mike, he is available. Mike at c26triathlon.com. If you need anything from me, Robbie at c26triathlon.com.
All right, man. I will catch you later.
All right, man. See you, buddy.
See you, man.